am so excited to be here because speaking in front of parents is one of my biggest passions. Because our kids are our most valuable gifts. And so tonight, I really hope that you just take a break from whatever it is you're thinking about or worrying about or stressed about, and you allow yourself to identify some things that you can do a little differently to help your children grow and develop in really healthy ways. And I have an interesting background, and I want to tell you about that so that you have an idea of where I'm coming from. First of all, I'm not mic'd. Nobody has ever told me I need to speak up. I have a pretty loud voice, so hopefully you can hear me. I am being videotaped, so if there's any hecklers in the audience, I'm going to warn you ahead of time, you're going to be on the videotape. But a little bit about me so that you understand where this information is coming from and a little bit of my education. I'm a trained teacher. I was a special education teacher in the Lancaster County school systems for many years. I got out of teaching when my son was born. So I have not been a teacher for 18 years. However, I've been in the school districts for the last 18 years, doing consulting and training, and I have a public speaking business where I go into businesses and speak on different topics like emotional intelligence and communication, etc. I also do a lot of private parenting work. So I go into people's homes and like the Nanny 911, where I come in and evaluate what's going on in your homes, and I work with local psychologists in doing that. However, 2 summers ago, my career kind of took a sharp left turn, and an eye doctor in Carlisle asked me to become the practice administrator at his office. So by day, I actually work for an eye surgeon in Carlisle, and on the side, I still run my private consulting and training business. So I have some interesting behavior stories to weave into this parenting class, because we're going to be talking about your parenting style tonight. And your parenting style can very much reflect how you act in the workplace as well. So depending on certain personality traits that you have, you may be actually transferring some of these things into other areas of your life. So for example, I'm in charge of 14 individuals, and I have a certain style, and it's very similar to the style that I have as a parent. So you're going to see how children who are raised in environments that get certain help with traits and skills can grow up and become adults that have those that move on into the workplace with those. And so I'm going to relate some of that to you so that you have a better idea of what I'm talking about. So by day, I'm the practice administrator at Hartzell Eye Specialist in Carlisle. And in the evening, I do my parenting workshops and do consulting for school districts. I absolutely love what I do because I feel like I make more of an impact now than I did when I was a teacher. Because for every single parent that's sitting in my audience, hundreds of parents over the course of a year, I think of all the families that can be impacted. The information that I bring you is decades of research on parenting. This is not my personal opinion. This is based on experts in the field who have written many books, who speak all over the world on this topic. And so I will let you know when it's my opinion versus when it's coming from an expert in the field. I have strong opinions on parenting, and I've met hundreds of parents who are doing it right. I've met hundreds of parents who are doing it wrong. And when I say wrong, it's not that I'm judging you. There are certain things, though, that can go very wrong in parenting. Where did you learn your parenting style? You learned it from your parents and the people who raised you. So some of the things we're going to talk about that is majorly influencing the behavior in your home came right from the way you were raised. So you have maybe made a conscious decision not to repeat history. And that would be conscious decision. Or you catch yourself driving down the road saying, you know, I'm going to pull this car over if you kids don't stop doing X, Y, Z. And you hear your father talking or your mother talking. So we're going to be talking about your style, and your handouts have the 3 styles that I want to address. There's actually a 4th style, and I'll tell you what that is later. Most likely you are not that style because you're here tonight. So I'll explain that a little later. But I want you to think about, if everybody could just have the vision of when you brought your child home from the hospital, or you brought your child into the family. And I want you to think about how innocent that child was and how sweet and how you just had plans for the way things were going to go. Well, what happens is they grow up and they become 18, like my son who's graduating from Manheim Township in June. And so all of the things that I did with him from the time I brought him home from the hospital until he was standing at my front door, this was his senior year picture, I take a picture of him at the front door every year. Everything I did, all of those characteristics and traits I was trying to build in him, helped him become who he is today. I am absolutely not a perfect parent. No one can be a perfect parent. But these are the type of parents I've met, and then I'll tell you who I am. I have parents that wake up every morning and they say, you know what, I know I'm screwing up. I know I'm doing the wrong thing. I shouldn't be screaming or yelling or using corporal punishment. I know I'm doing it, but you know what? That's what my parents did, and I think I turned out okay. So they actually choose not to make a change, knowing that what they're doing is damaging. Then there's the other parent that wakes up, and they say to themselves, you know, I know what I'm doing is probably not 100% what I should be doing. I want to learn how to do it better. And they make every effort to make a change in their parenting. I would hope that would be me. And then there's the parents who might think they're just getting it all right, and there's no flaws in what they do, and they don't take any responsibility for some of their children's behavior. You can't control all of your child's behavior. What you can do is plant seeds for really healthy emotional growth in your child. I was a special education teacher, and I can tell you when I taught kindergarten through 3rd grade, there was a direct reflection between some of the parents' behavior and the behavior that came into my classroom. So we have to acknowledge that some of the things we're doing are really great, and they're going to develop wonderful traits in our children, and some of the things maybe we need to change. And that's what I'm going to be asking you to do tonight. Try to acknowledge your behavior and the connection between your child's behavior. When we look at these things, we're going to be talking about things like whether we're yelling and screaming. What kind of discipline are we using? Are we using logical consequences or are we using punishment? All of these things that help our children try to figure out how to problem solve, get along with other people, have social and emotional skills, they are learning it first from you. Then they bring some of those behaviors into the classroom. And depending upon the teacher may acknowledge that there's certain things that they really want to work on with your child. You need to be open to listening to the teachers. If you are in the school district and you have found that the psychologist, the guidance counselor, the teacher, the principal, they're telling you that your child is having some behavioral issues, you need to stop and really take a look at where you think that's coming from. And make sure you're looking at every single area of your child's life to try to get them back on focus, back on track. When we look at the styles, we're going to address 3 styles, and you have these handouts, and this is what I would like you to do. I'm going to be mentioning some of these characteristics. I want you, if you have a pen, if you would like to, check off things that you go, oh yeah, that's me. That would definitely be me. And I want you to start acknowledging things you're doing in your home that may be creating some behavioral issues for you. Because some of these styles are not conducive to good behavior. Okay? So, first, before we get into this first style, let me see your hands if you saw the topic for tonight, behaviors, and you signed up like the first second you saw that the topic was behaviors. Anybody notice behaviors? Okay, everybody's holding their hands up too high. You're most likely all in that same boat because behaviors is my most popular topic. It's the one everybody wants to know, how do we get kids to behave? Well, first we have to be a good model. And some of these behaviors, these are parent behaviors. So some of these behaviors are not good models for our child. So I love it. I was at Giant a couple months ago, and this woman was screaming at her child, and the child was screaming back at her, and she kept screaming at him, "Why are you yelling at me?" Terrible modeling. She's screaming, he's screaming back, and then you wonder why the child's yelling back. So we have to look in the mirror sometimes. and say, what is the direct connection here between my child's behavior and my behavior? Sometimes there is not a connection. Certainly, I have an 18-year-old son, and there's some things he does, and I'll say, where did that come from? Sometimes there's just not a connection. Kids are going to be kids. They're going to make mistakes. And I want you to keep something in mind. Please remember to tell your child, now, no matter what age they are, their behavior is a choice. They choose how to behave every day. And so with that choice, you have the same choice, how to behave as a parent. So behavior is a choice. I have 14 employees, and when I came into the practice, there were 13 employees. I only have 3 original employees from 22 months ago when I started, because behavior was a choice. I increased the level of expectation for professionalism. People either jumped ship or got fired. For your children, you need to increase your level of expectation for behavior. So many times, we do not, especially with the permissive style, hold children accountable for their developmentally appropriate behavior. So if you have a 7-year-old and you're still tying their shoes, or you have a 9-year-old and you're still ordering for them when you go to Ruby Tuesdays, that's not a direct, that's not an appropriate expectation. You need to raise the level of your expectation for social and emotional growth for your child. This permissive style, this is the one that probably would drive me the most crazy. And when I see people using this style, I know what the outcome is going to be for the children. Take a look at these traits, and I want to see if anything jumps out at you that you would like me to make a comment on before I start on this list. Is there anything that stands out on this style? And please speak up nice and loud, because this is being videotaped. Yes?
What if it's sometimes? Like looking at all these, I mean, I can't imagine someone doing it all the time, but what if you're sometimes giving in, or sometimes, you know,
Yes.
doing it?
So the question is, when you look at these traits, you may have traits from all 3 styles, which says to me you're inconsistent in your parenting. And when you're inconsistent in your parenting, children get inconsistent messages on how to do what? How to behave. So many times with the permissive style, it swings back and forth from permissive because a parent gets so tired of repeating themselves. This is classically, you repeat, you repeat, you repeat. Then they become more dictator, where they start yelling. So yes, you can absolutely have some of these traits sometimes. Of course, we all do. It's not good to have that style, though, where you're all over the place, because it just sends inconsistent messages about how to behave to the child. What traits, though, would you like me to, yes?
The interesting one for me is I have a hard time saying no to my child, because when you say no, a battle's coming.
Okay.
So,
And tell me, are you afraid of saying no because of what's going to happen after you say no?
kind of, yeah.
Okay, probably, right? So when we let our kids know that they're in control, which that's what you're doing, you're letting your child know they're in control, they really have a good sense of, I'm the boss, and if he even says no, I could probably get him to say yes. And so when we are afraid of the outcome, I call them school-age temper tantrums. I know adults that have adult temper tantrums in the workplace. Our spouses have adult temper tantrums sometimes. When somebody shows that they are worried about the outcome, you create a pattern of misbehavior. So in other words, you're saying to the child, you can behave that way, that's acceptable. Because you're not holding them accountable for having socially appropriate behavior on how to take no for an answer. And there's a really good book that I love. I met the author twice. His name's Dr. Bob Brooks. He's been at several conferences, and he talks about raising resilient children. And I had the opportunity to have lunch with him at one of the conferences. And I said, Bob, what would I ask parents? What's one thing I could ask parents to find out how resilient their children are. He said, just ask them one thing. How do they take no for an answer? And if the answer is, oh, they won't take no for an answer, or they'll throw a tantrum, or they'll beg and cry and whine, they lack resiliency. So that's a learned behavior. So when we stop being so concerned about what the outcome is going to be, and we hold them accountable for their behavior, the behavior disappears or decreases significantly. So I'll explain this in terms of adult terms. When I started working for this practice, there was a woman who was working there that had this, she won't take no for an answer. And she would very verbally get loud and pretty obnoxious. And she had been there for several years and had been allowed to act that way. And so I was just serving as a consultant for a couple of months before I was hired full time. And she approached me in the kitchen and had one of her temper tantrums because we changed the dress code. And I stood there and I thought, this must be her normal behavior because nobody would act like this unless they could. And so I talked to the doctor about it and he said, I need that kind of behavior to stop. Can you help me with that? Can you work with her? And so while I was talking to her in the kitchen, I just said to her, this looks like this is really hard for you. This was a hard decision the doctor made. I would love to talk to you about that over lunch with him. So instead of letting her, like me look afraid or say, oh yeah, okay, I understand where you're coming from and I'm really worried about that too, I let her know that the expectation for what we want from her is more adult-like behavior. So fortunately, she quit within a couple of months after I was hired full-time, so the behavior disappeared. She would not have lasted there because the expectation for professionalism increased and she would not have most likely been able to meet that expectation. So we must raise the bar for our children's appropriateness and their social skills. And a social skill is resiliency and being able to take no for an answer. Because I guarantee you they're going to have to hear no on a sports team. They're going to have to hear no in a third grade classroom. They're going to hear no if they go to a friend's house. So they have to be able to do that. So usually our fear is, oh, they're going to melt down. But there's a good quote at the end of my slides that says, giving kids what they want when they want it now has long-term negative significant consequences for your child. Negative. Because what kind of adults do they grow up to be? The woman that stood in the kitchen at the doctor's office. Won't take no for an answer. And bullies her way through the office work. So we want to give kids traits that are more assertive, not aggressive. What else stands out? Because I guarantee there's traits that are popping up that you can relate to in this. Yeah.
For me, it's my child dictates the schedule in our home because I have a hard time scheduling period, but yeah.
Schedule is really important. Schedule, and it'll come after the slides on the styles, but a schedule, and I'm sure for your sake too, a schedule gives you some comfort in what's happening next, and it does the same for children. So I notice children in a school who are coming from homes where it's scattered and crazy and hectic and chaotic, they come into the classroom that way. They come into the classroom more stressed out, and a lot of kids look anxious coming out of those homes. They can't find their shoes in the morning, they don't know where their homework is, all of that type of thing. They didn't eat breakfast, and they forgot to brush their teeth. It's not very conducive to good learning, especially when they're just entering the classroom. And I talk to hundreds of teachers every year, and they say that is the one thing that stands out. They can tell children coming from homes who the structure and the consistency is there with the schedule, because they're getting to bed at a certain time and they have that routine. Routine really helps give kids a sense of comfort and less stress and anxiety overall. So if you're having trouble with that one, that's going to be one you want to take away from this for sure. What else stands out? Yeah?
The logical consequences.
Okay. So why do you think permissive passive parenting, there's a difficult time with logical consequences? Why do you think that would be with this style? right? There's not a whole lot of consequences. And if there are, it's usually, they'll just jump to punishment, which is different, where it's a lot of just taking away privileges because they don't know what else to do. So logical consequences connect with the behavior. So your child is walking to the kitchen sink with their bowl of cereal and they spill milk all over the floor. They just go get paper towels and clean it up. It's direct connection between what they've done and the consequence. We overthink this. Your child goes and knocks over the brother's Lego tower. They need to go help them rebuild it. That's a logical consequence. So we really overthink this and we don't connect the behavior with the consequence. We just do a lot of takeaways. What else stands out? Yes?
For me, it's the one about giving your child choices.
Okay.
Your child has choices for most of their activities throughout the day. So I would think that giving your child a choice is a good thing.
Yes. Too many choices, a lot of problems. Because they're going to get to school and there's going to be limited choices. And so these are the homes where I see that whole, the child is dictating what's going on. So here's the example. You're making dinner and you're making spaghetti with meatballs. And your child comes in and says, I don't want spaghetti and meatballs, I want macaroni and cheese. Now all of a sudden you're making macaroni and cheese. Where you were making spaghetti with meatballs and now the child's getting something special ordered with a short order cook. Do you want this? Do you want that? It's basically the child's going through their whole day deciding what they're going to do for every little thing. There needs to be some structure to their day, and within that is limited choices. They don't get a say for everything. And that's going to be in the real world too, like in the doctor's office that I work in. They don't get a choice with the dress code. This is what the dress code is. They don't get a choice in when they clock in and clock out. And if they choose to not clock in or clock out at the right time, they won't have a job. So we really need to be thinking about, are we giving kids too many choices? I mean, don't you find it overwhelming if you have too many choices? Did you ever go to a really good restaurant and you're looking at the menu, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm totally overwhelmed by the menu because there were so many things to eat? So we need to make sure we give kids limited choices, which is really a valuable skill to teach them problem solving. Do you want this or do you want this? And they have to make a choice. The problem is when you give them limited choices and they choose C, not A or B. So there's where your child is now pushing your limits. And that's where you would probably have a hard time saying no, right? So do you want pancakes or waffles? And that's what you have Saturday morning, pancakes or waffles, and they say oatmeal. And you keep saying pancakes and waffles. If your child is going to oatmeal and you give in every time, you just said then you're not consistent in your choices. And they can get what they want when they want it right now. Anything else stand out? Yes?
If you do pancakes and waffles and things, is what you
Sure.
choose one or the other of what it is, or you get nothing.
Absolutely. Yes. So you use the broken record technique. You say it 3 times, giving the same exact choices. Pancakes or waffles, pancakes or waffles, pancakes or waffles. They say, I want oatmeal. And now they're melting down on the kitchen floor, having a little fit, okay? And so I watch this all take place when I'm in these homes. And so then the choice becomes you choose or I choose. And it's rapid. This is not like a 20-minute conversation. Then you choose pancakes and they go, fine, I'll eat waffles. You don't go with the waffles because you see the manipulation there. Okay? Again, it's the consistency. Then they won't eat what you make. Oh well, we worry way too much that our kids are going to starve to death because they missed one meal. We need to get over that. We need to get over that. So we need to let kids suffer the natural consequence of actually being hungry. You see how that connects? Okay? How about I allow my child to interrupt adult conversations? Mom, 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 dad, dad, dad. While you're talking to another adult or you're talking to your child, another child in the home. That's permissive parenting. So you're saying to your child in that moment, you are so special that I'm going to interrupt a conversation I'm having with another person because you are so special. And so what that starts is the child then learns how to manipulate situations to get your attention. The only time my child could interrupt me was for 2 things. Fire, blood. That was it. The house is on fire, you're bleeding from somewhere. Other than that, you can wait a few seconds. You can wait a minute. And so we need to get kids to not feel like they are the center of the universe. They may be the center of your universe. They get out into school, sports, other people's homes, they're not going to be the center of somebody else's universe. So they have to learn to wait. They have to learn to take turns. They have to learn to be respectful. Okay? Really, really important. So I want you to look at this. And if there's any traits that are standing out that you definitely have, maybe sometimes, not all the time. I mean, certainly, I've repeated requests before taking action. The key for this is, how much of it are you doing? Because this is what starts the pattern. So if you're doing it a lot, the child then learns, okay, this is who dad is, this is who mom is, this is what I can get away with, this is what I can't. Good cop, bad cop in your home. So it's wonderful when I see couples here together because you can identify your styles and you can know, oh, we're setting ourselves up. Because dad says yes to everything and then they go, back and forth. They play good cop, bad cop with parents. So you need to really be aware of that. This style produces children that have a very difficult time making decisions. They have a very difficult time making decisions and problem solving. They have a difficult time making decisions about good behavior as well. So these are kids that sometimes look out of control to me. They may be literally, the kids are like standing up on my couch, when they're younger and thinking, you're at my home, and they think that they can get away with more behaviorally because they have not had limits and boundaries in place. And these early developmental years are really critical to getting kids to have that structure and boundary. The next style is the dictator style. No one ever wants to admit that they have this style or that they use this style. Most of us have used it. This is the style that, permissive gives too many choices. Dictator they don't give any choices. So it's basically my way or the highway. You're getting pancakes. There's no limited choices. Anything stand out here? Either many people will say, oh, this is the style I grew up with. I had this mom or this dad. And by the way, moms are like this too, not just dads. But what stands out to you that you can absolutely make a direct connection between some behaviors and this style? Yes?
I get easily annoyed and agitated if my child does not respond to my requests.
Okay. You're saying you do?
I do, yeah.
Okay. So how does that go for you then when you get agitated?
Not good.
What behaviors result in it?
Continuing to ignore me.
Okay. And so what happens to your behavior then?
Then that's when I start to get louder.
Okay. So you can see with this style, you're going to escalate a situation. Okay. I've done work in domestic violence for 26 years. I speak on domestic violence. This is a domestic violence style for abusers. I'm not saying you're an abuser, but they have some of these traits where they escalate very quickly. And so for your child who is living with any of these characteristics where you as a parent show you have an emotional short fuse, think about the modeling for when a child accidentally does something at school and how they're going to respond. There is a direct connection between this style and children having difficulty regulating emotion. Direct connection. And so we want children to respond in a way that's healthy no matter what happens. Are they going to have a bad day? Of course they are. We have a bad day. We might yell. We might do something. We have to ask our kids and say, can you just forgive me? I had a really bad day. I'm so sorry. And that's okay every once in a while. But if it's part of a regular pattern of behavior, then that's more of your actual style, okay? So when we look at, I like to be in control. Hey, I like to be in control, let me tell you. I really do. It's one of my traits. I like to be in control, but I also can delegate and give control to other people. It's not always, my say. I don't always have to have the final word. We need children to learn assertive traits. This style does not help children learn assertive traits. And you know what the studies show in bullying? I do a lot of bullying seminars in school districts. The parenting traits that produce a victim or a bully is having one permissive parent in the home and one dictator. That's a classic combination of marriages, by the way. Dictator, permissive. Dictator, permissive. So the permissive parent, if you're the mom and you're permissive, you're modeling for any little girl in the house, just walk on eggshells, stuff your emotions, you don't get a say, you don't have a voice, you don't matter. So that's the traits for the girl, and the girl can become a victim. So they're the victim of bullying. Let's say the man is the dictator in the home, you're modeling for a little boy, go bully other people. Take control. Let your voice be heard. Don't care about other people's feelings. You can have a short fuse. That's the classic bullying environment for a child, where they're either going to come out of that home more as a victim, a target for bullies, or they're going to come out as a bully. And so lots and lots of research on that. So this style, I recently, in Manhattan Township School District, I guess it was last spring, they asked me to do an observation of an elementary school for a kindergarten. And I knew the kindergarten teacher, and she said, Lisa, you're not going to believe some of this behavior. And I said, are you going to have a consultation with the parents? And she said, okay. And I went into the meeting already predicting that one of them was going to have this style based on the child's behavior in the classroom. And they did. And it was that. The same-sex parent is the most influential parent. The same-sex parent. So if you're doing some of these things, you need to think, how is this impacting your children? What else stands out here? Yes?
If you could please expand on I make demands.
Yes, it's just very demanding. You're abrupt. You don't ask for your child's opinion on things. It's more do this, do that, do this, do that. It's not an environment that's conducive to allowing a child to express emotion because they feel under pressure a lot. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety in these homes. Little girls tell me they're always walking on eggshells if they have a parent that's this dictator. What else? Anybody grow up in a home like this?
I did, and I catch myself doing number two, both number two. And I always worry about my child's self-esteem when I do that.
Yes. So, I don't know if you're familiar with the 5 love languages, but one of the love languages is words of affirmation. If you don't know Gary Chapman's 5 love languages, please buy the book. I do a class on that as well. And words of affirmation are really critical to a child to build self-esteem. So when you do loud, aggressive speaking, it doesn't help a child feel good about who they are. It scares them. And so I actually call that fear-based parenting, where we're getting our children to behave in a way by using our voices to intimidate. Because typically, isn't that why we do it? When I was a school teacher, I would raise my voice, and think, oh, I'm going to get their attention. But it does the opposite. It scares them. And yes, it may get their attention, but they're only doing what you're asking them to do because of what? Fear. So really trying to, the first step is recognizing it, and that you already have that. So your self-awareness is first, then making a change is second. So just being able to say, you know what, I am doing that too much. I really got to get a handle on that. Because it absolutely, you're correct, it impacts self-esteem. Yes?
So I guess my question is, what if you're starting out with a lower voice? Like in our household, it's a lower voice that I'm typically the dictator, I guess you want to say. But I always start out very calm, and I'm repeating and repeating and repeating, clean up, clean up, clean up, clean up. My voice starts to elevate. I can feel myself start to elevate. Where where do you draw that line and what do you do at that point if nothing's happening? What, go to your room, do that, you know, I don't know.
So she just said something so classic that we do. You said you start off with a normal voice, and then you keep repeating. Stop repeating, and go do something. So kids are waiting for your action. There's there's some really, really good quotes in this book. By the way, if I had to recommend, I mean, I have dozens and dozens of books, but if I had to recommend a parenting book, it would be Parent Talk by Chick Norman. And he talks about the repeating. And I don't know if I have it earmarked, but you just reminded me of that, because when a child keeps on hearing the same request over and over again, you didn't mean it the first time. What do you think the average time a parent repeats themselves before taking action? How many times? Oh yeah, here's the example. How many times do you think a parent repeats themselves before they actually take action? Guess a number? 9 times. So this chapter is called 1, 2, 3, and I'm glad you brought this up. This is a mom asking her child to pick up some toys. Billy, please pick up your toys. Pretty normal voice, right? Billy, I asked you to pick up your toys. Billy, did you hear me tell you? I said pick up your toys. William Robert, the next time I come into this living room, you better have those toys picked up. How many times do I have to tell you? Pick up your toys. Okay, I'm not warning you again. Pick up your toys. Okay, mister, this is your last chance. Pick up your toys. A child who keeps hearing the same request said different ways isn't listening anymore because you've done nothing to say it's really time to pick up your toys. Then the last request, the last thing that the parent threatens, she starts counting. 1, I hear this in the store all the time. 2, and I'm like, I can't wait. You know, I'm standing over by the bread aisle going, I want to see what she does on bread. Because most of the time, nothing happens. Nothing happens. So the child knows he did not have to listen to the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, or seventh request. He only has to listen when she starts counting. So, you request something the first time. Then the second time, you take action. The one thing that we really miss in requesting is giving kids a warning that something's going to happen. Hey buddy, we're having dinner in 5 minutes. So I know you're in the middle of building that Lego tower, you're in the middle of watching your show, but in 5 minutes the TV's getting turned off. Or in 5 minutes, we're just going to leave the Lego tower there and you're going to come out and have spaghetti. 5 minutes. This is a critical part that we miss. Because when we can give a child a warning, we can give them a heads up to the transition that's going to happen, which really helps, and Dr. Brooks talks about this, really helps with the resiliency. Because then when the 5 minutes is up, you don't have to repeat anymore. What do you need to do now? Go turn the TV off. Go in and go, let's go, it's time. Instead of yelling from the kitchen stove, come on, I told you to come in, turn off the TV. And you're standing in the kitchen yelling. That's about you. That's not about the child. I wouldn't listen to you either. Because when you keep repeating and repeating and repeating, all it does is say you're escalating, you're getting all, flustered, you're raising your voice, but nothing's happening. So we have to raise our expectation on that for ourselves and for our child. Try to give, when it's appropriate, a warning, this is going to happen, and then follow through over time. That consistency is going to be key to getting a change to take place. So stop repeating. Stop repeating. Yes?
So you're building the Lego tower and you're telling them, okay, 5 minutes dinner. Okay, 5 minutes is up. It's dinner time. You're still building the Lego tower. What's the consequence? Take away the Legos?
Yeah.
No, you don't need to take away the Legos. You go in and you physically say, let's go. See, so for teachers, I have to always change how I talk because Your parents, you go in and get them. So you're not yelling from the kitchen anymore. You go in and go, let's go. And you're standing right there. You're down on their eye level. Your actions say you mean it. Your actions say you mean that it's time for dinner. Standing in the kitchen still yelling from the stove does not say you mean it. Standing there or getting down on their level and even helping them put the Legos away if they're done says you mean it. Do you see the difference? It's action. Take action instead of just repeating. Yes?
What if it's like your child has like a nervous habit almost? Like my little one, she constantly has her fingers in her mouth. Do I keep saying, get your fingers out of your mouth, fingers out of your mouth? Or will they grow out of it? Because it makes me, I get mad.
Right. That may be actually increasing the likelihood she's going to keep doing it.
I see that happening.
Right. So you could do, and how old?
She's 6.
Okay.
I don't know if it's wiggly teeth or it's just constant.
Right. I wouldn't worry about it a whole lot. At this point, of course, we're all like germs and all that stuff, and we hate all that. I would try to remind less, just to kind of see what happens, but also do like some gentle physical reminders. Like if you're out and she just, gently just put her hand down and make sure she has to wash her hands before she eats and things like that. But to really make sure you settle the stress and anxiety over it down, which may also help with her stress or anxiety with it. I don't know enough about what's going on there, but that's the first thing I can tell you to do. Yeah. Yes?
I'm dealing with a kiddo who's in an escalation phase, where like, you say no, and then he'll up the ante and say, okay, fine, and then I'm gonna do this instead. And so I'm having a hard time with this negotiation business that I don't want to be in.
Well, negotiation business started somewhere. Okay, so let's start there. It started somewhere. So Ray Levy, who wrote the book Try and Make Me, for a child who's like, oh yeah, you're gonna make me do that? Well, watch what I can do. Now they're standing on top of the edge of your couch. He says never engage a child in a power struggle because they're gonna win every time. The second you engage them in the whole negotiation thing, well, oh no, I'm gonna show you who's boss, they won. Because for every behavior, there's a payoff, positive or negative. And even negative payoffs continue, even when they get negative payoffs. So we need to remove the power struggle. Just like I gave you the example of the limited choices, A or B, A or B, A or B, you choose, I choose. It's not a negotiation process, it's A or B. So they can choose one of those things, but they're not gonna stand there and tell you why they want C. You're not gonna listen to it. There's other times where, of course, your child has an opinion. They have feelings. They can express those things and you validate them and talk to them. But if every time you ask them to do something, they start the negotiation process, they're going to become master manipulators, which is not a good trait to have in adulthood or a child. So that started somewhere, and so the way it'll end is you increasing the level of expectation for behavior and not engaging in it. Does that make sense? Yes?
So how do you do that? Like, because my daughter, if I tell her something, she does, she tries to manipulate like that. I'll show you the birthday example. And like sometimes I said, I already told you no, and I don't want that, it's not gonna, otherwise she's gonna have to work out.
Right.
So what do you do?
You stop talking. So what we do is we think we have to keep talking about it. Just stop talking. You don't have to say I said that. Your response is, you're not
I try
engaging.
to, I try to say, conversation stuff, so I just need to roll away.
Exactly. That's that whole not engaging in a power struggle. So when we can disengage, it says to the child, oh, I'm not getting that payoff anymore. So therefore the behavior is either going to decrease or it's going to become eliminated because it's not going to work anymore. See, when you have a behavior no longer receive the same benefits it received before, here's a good, and some of you are going to go, oh no, when I tell you this. But parents get really upset when I say this, but it's the truth. If your child behaves in every other environment except yours, it's you. That's the good news, because all you have to do is make a change. If your child is behaving at school, and in Cub Scouts, and on the soccer field, and at church Sunday school, and for the neighbor who watches it 2 days a week, and he gets in the back of your car from somewhere and just acts out, there's a payoff. They're getting some sort of payoff. You need to end the payoff. You need to change how you're responding so that the child learns the expectation looks different. When I taught special ed, I taught in Columbia Borough. I had 18 kids, kindergarten through 3rd grade, with no assistant. Severe behavior disorders. Severe. Those kids, by December, could pretty much act like everybody else in the school. Why? Because in my classroom, the expectation was a certain expectation. I showed them what would happen when they had good behavior. I showed them what happened when they had bad behavior. So they learned how to behave appropriately. They walked out my door and saw mom waiting on the corner for them to walk home. They knew that expectation was totally different. So therefore, they behaved differently. What you want to know is, you're doing something right if your child has enough self-control to go in other environments and have good behavior. So that's a wonderful thing. Change what you're doing so you're getting the same positive results that the school's getting and the soccer team's getting. Okay? Because it's really important you acknowledge that some of these things are going to be super negative for behaviors in your home. Any other last comments for this? Yes?
Hempfield League bypass to all the
Yes.
and it's a huge problem for us. I'm not sure what it is that I'm doing wrong. He usually works
Work
late, so
safe.
he's not home, it's just.
Sure.
And I think his age has something to do with it too. You talked about how I struggled. I definitely had that with him. When he brings home his iPad, and the school district has allowed him to put games and things on there, so I want to allow him some time to play, to have some time to unwind after school. That's
Sure.
reasonable, I understand that, but when it's time to put it away, he doesn't, we end up, you know, actually under it, pulling that forward. How do I stop that? Because unless I'm with it for his hand, he will not do it well.
Yeah, that's actually a really easy answer. You didn't take the technology parenting seminar I did a couple weeks ago?
We had
Okay.
a concert.
It's school concert that.
Okay, because we addressed, yeah, it's actually videotaped. I think it's still on the district website. So there was a technology parenting session I did here. And so that's a real easy one. He's actually going to lose the privilege because of the physical aggression. So with physical aggression, the consequences get more severe. And that's a school possession. And first of all, I would never engage him in the physical back and forth. So you're escalating the situation then?
We're delayed for things, we have to put it in a locked box at night, because when I go to bed, I put it in a locked box, because if not, he'll wake up in the morning, and he'll turn it on, and we'll be late for school, or whatever, or church, or whatever, and it's gotten to the point now, we tried something this past weekend, it's gonna cost you $20 to go and play that iPad, and if you don't turn it off when you come into the warn, or put the timer on the oven and say, okay, you have an hour or whatever, and, you know, okay, you have 10 minutes to go, and, oh yeah, okay, and when the time comes up, you won't shut it off. And if he's like, we'll give a 5-minute premium, grace period if he's at the end of the game, okay? But after that, no, it cost him $20 last weekend to play it.
It was a deposit.
That's what
I really thought money is important to him, I really thought that would work. And he doesn't know that, but I was going to put it in his savings account, but the fact is he's not getting that back.
Right, and this part of this comment could go on and on. What I'm going to tell you is, it's probably part of a bigger picture of structure and consistency in your home that now has identified itself really greatly with the technology. So it may transfer to other things. So I would want to be looking at the structure of your home, the boundaries that are in place, what consequences have happened that connect to his behavior. So the $20, that's a punishment. That's actually not a logical consequence. And so, although I understand why you're doing that, because you're trying to get his attention. And by the way, that's what punishment does. It gets kids' attention. It doesn't necessarily teach self-control.
I don't think they're right. We did try last week. He was not allowed to bring it home. I told the teacher to keep it. She kept it Wednesday and Thursday at school. We decided, we talked to him about it, and he did not like that. And we said, we'll let him bring it home for the weekend and we'll see how it goes. It can always stay at the school if you can't cooperate. Right? We're still, he was a little better, but still, I didn't want to bring him today. He must not have gotten my message. He brought him home.
Well, in a nutshell, when you have an issue with a certain type of behavior, you have to have the boundaries much tighter in order for the child to prove themselves. It would never be an hour. It would be 10, 15 minutes. Then you would increase it if he was able to hand it back after that time, and you would work your way up. I'd be happy to talk to you a little bit more about that. I wish you could have taken that class because we kind of addressed that. But so boundaries and structure are really critical, especially this style. Sometimes there's too tight of boundaries. The last style that all the experts say, and I have seen absolutely with the hundreds of parents that I've worked with, produces the healthiest children, is the authoritative assertive approach. This is the approach that kids come out of being more resilient, they know how to take no for an answer, they have more self-control and emotional intelligence, they are not the kids coming into a classroom that look like highly anxious kids, that are very stressed. So this is the style that you really want to look at these characteristics and say tonight, you know what, here's a characteristic that I really think I want to start doing. The first thing is, my child has limited choices. So we keep talking about this choices thing, but they have limited choices. You can see schedule and routine are important. There's one near the end where it says rules in our home are clearly communicated. It isn't one day a child can't eat dinner in the family room, and then the next day dad says, you're not allowed to eat dinner in the family room. It's clear and consistent with the rules. Because that's confusing for a child and sometimes scary when the rules change all the time. Okay, they don't know how to act then. What else stands out to you on this style? That either you're doing or maybe you're not doing. We're going to be addressing these in small group in a few minutes here.
I have a question about logical consequences versus punishment. Does it ever get to a point where you do impose grounding or an actual punishment?
Yes, when the behavior escalates. So it would go from, you ask your child to clean up spilled milk. I'm just trying to come up with an example real quick. They dump their cereal, which would have been a logical consequence, because you want to teach. So this is how you remember consequences. Logical consequences teach the correct behavior. You spill milk on the cafeteria floor, you would want your child to go get paper towels and clean it up. That's what would probably happen at school. You spill milk on your kitchen floor, same thing. Teaching responsibility, okay? Being responsible, being held accountable for my actions, okay? The child, instead of cleaning it up, what could they do instead of that wouldn't be appropriate? Okay, they could walk away. What else could they do? Tell you to clean it up. So then you have to move to a more significant consequence. So the child may refuse to clean it up. So maybe they were going to go watch a TV show or go play on the computer or go outside and play basketball. They would not be allowed to go do those things until they cleaned it up. And I would leave it on the floor. So many times we swoop right in, we take care of it, and we don't allow the child to then have to wait on an activity or kind of suffer the more significant consequences. There's a million examples, but you take it from least restrictive to more restrictive. So you say, hey, just clean it up and we move on. Or, especially with verbal aggression and physical aggression, I always remove the child from the activity. Like they don't get to sit at the kitchen table if they're screaming and yelling at their brother. They don't get to continue to play Legos if they just hit somebody over the head with them. Okay, so physical and verbal aggression always move to the next level fairly quickly, which is removal. It doesn't teach the correct behavior. What it does is it sends a very strong message. This is totally unacceptable. However, if you use the dictator style and you yell and scream a lot, then don't expect your child not to yell and scream, because your model will be behavior. If you use any type of corporal punishment where you hit your child, don't expect your child not to be aggressive, because you're modeling it. Really a big one. Big one. Our society is so aggressive. Why are we continuing to breed aggression in our homes? Then they bring it into school. Okay? We really need to think about those things. This is the clear style that produces the healthiest kids. And when they grow up to be adults, they have emotional regulation. They have self-awareness of their emotions. They're able to read people better. Because these are parents who acknowledge and validate their child's feelings. So I had this thing happen in my family a couple years ago, and my son and I were driving out of the high school to this counseling session. And my son's exact words, I guess he was probably, I don't know, 15, 16 at the time, and we're driving up Oregon Pike to this counseling center, and he goes, "Mom, this sucks." That's what he said to me. Now, do I like the way he talked that way? No. I totally said to him, "You are right, Graham, this does." I said, "Who wants to be going to do this today?" So we acknowledge our kids' feelings, even when they're yucky feelings. We validate them and give them an opportunity to voice and be heard. Because kids who don't have the opportunity to express how they feel either stuff them, which is a classic girl response. They watch mom stuff emotion. They stuff them, or they come out in really ugly, aggressive ways. So when kids don't feel heard, and they don't feel validated, it says to them, my opinion, my thoughts, my feelings don't matter. And parents who use this style do a very good job. It's called emotional coaching, where they allow their child to express emotions even when they're difficult emotions. And he was absolutely right. It was like one of the worst feelings ever to have to go do this thing. But I acknowledged it. I allowed him to express it. And then you know what he said? And he did something Bob Brooks, who wrote Raising a Resilient Child. He was resilient in the moment and made a joke. He goes, "Well, I have one good thing to say about this. I get out of biology class. I hate my biology teacher." That's what he said. I said, "Well, at least one good thing came out of it." And we laughed. So we have to give kids an opportunity in this style to have some choices, to learn problem solving, but to also feel heard and validated. This is clearly what stands out most to me about this style. The other thing about this style is you're organized, you're structured, you follow through, you say what you mean. If you go into Giant and you say, we're only running in to get milk and cereal, and your child's in there begging you for things the whole way through the store, if you walk out with a cartload of junk after you just told them you were just getting milk and cereal, you didn't mean it when you walked in. And so that pattern starts a behavior series of events. And so we have to be more consistent in the way we're parenting. And this is the style to use. Who thinks they do a lot of these characteristics? They have these characteristics. That's good. Is there any characteristic that stands out that you say, I really need that characteristic? That's something I should be putting in place. Yes?
I do not engage my child in power struggles.
Exactly. I don't engage my child in a power struggle. Anything else that stands out? Yes?
To have schedules and routines.
The schedule and routine. I see you have a little one. You must have one too here in the school. And so the schedule and routine, remember, that creates a comfort. It's less stress and anxiety for your child when they know what to expect. Because when they know what to expect, they know how to behave. Think about that. If they know what's coming next, there's a better indication for them of what I'm supposed to do to behave. So if they know their bedtime's at 8 o'clock and you start the routine at 7, which would be when you would be starting it, not at 7:50, and then you're repeating, now they're in bed at 10 after a 9. See how that goes? If you're consistent, they know, oh, well, it's time to, microwave clock is set. By the way, I like timers, whatever you need to use to remind the child of what time it is. And you use that consistent routine. Now they know what to do next. Now I'm going to go up and get my bath, and then Dad's going to read a book to me, and then Mom will come in and tuck me in. They have a rhythm to their day, which helps a rhythm with consistent behavior. It makes sense. Can you imagine if you went into work every day and there was no rhythm? Well, maybe you have some of those jobs. I have a little bit of that, but there's a lot of consistency to what I do. That would create incredible stress and anxiety for me. Everybody understand what this style looks like? The style that I did not put up on here, and I actually do a lot of work with drug addiction. I work at Vantage House, which is a drug and alcohol center for women with their children. And many times, the women that come to me have the neglectful style for addicts. Because what they prioritize the drug or the habit over the child. And so we work on putting more of these characteristics in place for them, and they have to learn those characteristics and traits, because now they are trying to do better. And I always say to every mom or dad who ever takes a parenting class, when you know better, I would expect you would do better. Just like those examples at the beginning where I said a parent who wakes up, and they know they're not doing the right thing, and they choose not to do it anyway, that's not who we want to be. So this is the clear style that you want to have a really good pattern going in your home, because you're going to see behaviors change fairly quickly if you're consistent. So what you're going to do right now, yes, go ahead.
On the opinions, the last one, especially as they get older, I've struggled knowing what to allow them to have an opinion on and what they're not to allow them to have an opinion on. So sometimes they can say in a very respectful manner, but they just say, I disagree with your parenting style, your parenting style. You shouldn't, like we got older and younger, so you shouldn't parent that way to the younger one. Or, you shouldn't run the household this way. Or you should, so it's an opinion set in a respectful manner, but there's no authoritative respect. And part of that I say is parents don't demand respect anymore. Neither do teachers, neither do coaches. There's almost nowhere in society that we respect the elders anymore. So there's that balance between, it's not that dictated, I'm an elder, so I'm under my house, it's under, you're under my roof, so my rules go, I don't care what you say. To that, that you're not the boss in the house, and you don't get to have an opinion about it. Where do you draw that line as they get older?
Well, you acknowledge you heard them. So that's a big one. Chip Mormon talks about that in Parent Talk, acknowledging you heard them. It doesn't mean you agree. Lots of people give me opinions all day long of the people that I'm managing. I don't agree with them. And I acknowledge that I've heard them. I take bits and parts that may have some things that are something we can apply. So if your son comes and says, I don't think it's really fair, Dad, that you're still making me come home at a certain time or whatever, you can say, tell me a little bit more about that. What doesn't feel right? They may have a very valid point about that. My son wanted to drive to the Flyers game. I think it was in Washington, D.C. We were Flyers fans. Was there a Washington, D.C. game? I think they were down there recently. And he wanted to go to D.C. He's been to Philly. He's driven all over the place. And he goes, Mom, let me tell you why I think I should be able to do that. I already knew he wasn't driving to D.C. I knew he wasn't driving. And I said to him, tell me about that. And he goes, I haven't had an accident. I've had a license for 2 years. I've gone into Philadelphia, on and on and on. And I said to him, I can absolutely see why you would feel comfortable and confident driving to D.C. I have more experience doing that, and I have to make a corporate decision not to allow you to do that for your safety. So I heard him, and he said a couple things, well, I kind of think that's stupid, and you don't trust me and all that, and I said, I get that. I understand why you feel that way. And I wasn't going to talk about it any longer. So sometimes it's okay just to let them express it. He can never say he wasn't heard. Not all the time am I going to get into a whole big long dialogue about it, but he had some good points, actually. The whole, I haven't had any problems or issues in 2 years. He's right. He leaves for college in August. He's probably going to be able to get in this country, not tell me where he went. So there's some things sometimes we have to acknowledge, but we have a child do it in a respectful way, and it starts when they're younger, where we give them an opportunity to have opinions, and then we also let them know that sometimes just because they have an opinion doesn't mean we're going to go with it. So it starts really young.
But what about when those opinions are really personal attacks? They're said in a respectful way, but they're personal attacks.
That just goes into maybe the relationship dynamics, the tone. I would have to see the whole scenario and how that plays out. But I would let the child know, I understand you're saying this, you know that I have feelings attached to that. So see, again, we have to teach kids how to acknowledge other people's feelings, and the way we do that is first validating them. That's where they learn empathy, by the way, from us. So if you don't care about your child's feelings and you dismiss their feelings, big boys don't cry, dismissive, then they don't learn how to relate to others and know that if I say this, your feelings might get hurt. So there's something there that, just the dynamics of the relationship, I'm not sure. What I want you to do right now, we're going to take a few minutes before we kind of wrap things up, is look at your parenting style, now that you have them, and see which characteristics are you really fairly consistent with. Or are you all three? Are you two of them? And I want you to really think about one area that you want to improve immediately. Like you know now that this is probably why some of these behaviors are happening, or this is probably why I'm struggling with this as a parent. And if the other people who are raising your child are not here tonight, you may also kind of look at how these dynamics in a home are behavior. So I want you to take a few minutes. You're probably going to have about 10 minutes. You can stand up and stretch. This isn't a break. We don't take like an official break. But you can stand up and stretch, and we'll talk about this, but if everybody could kind of comment on these two things while looking at this 3 styles. That's the only thing you need to address. So feel free to get in groups of like 4, 5, 6, and just talk for a couple minutes about this. That you've identified that you want to immediately improve. That you know now is like, yeah, I need to stop doing this or start doing that. What are some of those traits? Saying no. Okay, and if you can be consistent in saying no, then you teach your child how to build some resilient muscle. And so being able to say no and meaning it is going to go a long way in your home. Think about as they reach adulthood, how many no's they're going to have to hear. And so if in childhood they learn how to be resilient through those no's, and you teach them appropriate regulation of emotion, meaning you're not the short fuse who screams and yells at the car at the guy in front of you who just cut you off. Emotional regulation, right there while your kids are watching and listening. This is what we're talking about. So being able to say no and being consistent in your no and regulating emotion is going to be really good for your kids. What else do you want to start or stop? Yeah.
Just do more logical consequences. I was really quick with this all the time.
Right, so what she's talking about is implementing more logical-based consequences instead of takeaways, which is more closely related to punishment. And I gave them the tip of the way to come up with a logical consequence is just say this to yourself. What behavior do I want to see? So if you have siblings who are always saying nasty things to each other, what behavior would you want to see? You would want to see respectful, kind behavior. Maybe they would give each other praise sometimes or say nice things. So you would actually make them practice doing so. Instead of go to your rooms. How are they going to be nice to each other or learn how to respectfully be siblings if they're just sitting in opposite rooms? That's fine to put them in their rooms if there's been physical or severe verbal aggression. You need to separate them and they need to just calm down. So severe verbal and physical aggression are always removable. However, we take away privileges all the time that have nothing to do with the actual crime, with the behavior. An example, you didn't eat your dinner. You're not going to play outside tonight. What does that have anything to do with not eating your dinner? You don't eat your dinner, you're not getting dessert or all the healthy snacks you're going to feed them. So we fill them up anyway then. So they don't really ever need to eat dinner. Are you one of those parents? We have to stop doing that. Because how are they going to learn how to regulate hunger? We overfeed our kids. We have snacks in our purse, snacks everywhere we go, snacks in the car, right? Some of you have them in your purse right now and in the back of your car. Because you don't want your child to ever be without a snack. Let's let our child experience hunger. It's a natural consequence of not eating the dinner. And stop feeding them right before dinner. While you're making the spaghetti, I saw a body expression over here that says that's how I do that all the time. Making the spaghetti and they're begging you, I want a granola bar, I need something to eat, I'm starving, I'm going to die. If I don't get something to eat. And you give them the granola bar, then you wonder why they don't eat the spaghetti dinner. We need to stop doing those things. Okay? A direct connection between your behavior and the child's behavior. What else are you going to do differently? Yes? The power struggles. So remember, never engage in a child in a power struggle. And you do that, someone mentioned the child getting really mouthy with them and being disrespectful. And so it would just be an easy, the child says, Mom, or Dad, take me to the mall. I want you to take me to the mall. This is like ridiculous. Like my friends are already there. Take me to the mall. And they're screaming at you. They're 12 or 13. Let me know when you want to talk about going to the mall. And you walk away. Meaning, I am not engaging in this conversation the way you're talking. So many times, kids hit these developmental levels that say, I'm really going to push you. I'm really going to show you who's boss. And the way you respond in that developmental moment is going to either set up a good pattern for behavior to change or a negative pattern for it to continue. So that same example, the parent who says, let me know when you're ready to discuss going to the mall, and you walk away and don't engage, what kind of behaviors do you think will happen then with the child if you're consistent with that style? What are they going to do?
Should I have done that?
Okay.
He runs right after me. He doesn't let me walk away.
Well,
And he also doesn't do this. I want to walk away and he's always.
that's okay. They can follow you. I mean, my son used to follow me all over the house. It's fine. He can follow me. It doesn't mean I'm speaking to him. It doesn't mean my body language says I'm paying any attention to you with this behavior. So what happens when you do the right response and you say, let me know when you're ready to talk? If you're consistent with that, what do you think happens with the 12 or 13-year-old's behavior?
Eventually they're ready to talk.
They're going to change the behavior because they're not getting the negative payoff. They're not getting the payoff of you engaging them and getting into a power struggle. So it's up to you. Developmentally, kids are going to test the limits. That's what they're made to do. You want them to. I know you probably don't believe me when I say this, but you don't want them to say yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, all the time. You don't want them to always do that because you want them to have assertive muscles, an assertive voice. You want them to feel like they can get validated and heard. And so you want them to have opinions. It's just how do you get them to get to that point where they know how to be respectful to others and have that social and emotional regulation that's very appropriate. Okay? You do that by the way you're responding to them now. What else are you going to do differently? Anybody going to stop yelling? Really damaging. Really damaging. Yeah.
I was going to say to listen and validate. I think sometimes depending on the situation, I haven't fully let my son share his thought and his opinion, and I can see his whole demeanor change, and then he becomes very upset, and then we become very upset, and the whole situation escalates.
Yes.
I think if I would have stopped and really left him share his opinion, even if I didn't agree with it or he wasn't going to get what he wanted in the end, I think it probably wouldn't have escalated there. I really agree with what
I totally agree with you. So I used to do a training, it was a 9-hour training on active listening, and it was over 3 classes. and we talk about using active listening with kids. So it's letting kids know you heard them, so you would paraphrase. Your child comes in from school and says they don't think the teacher was fair because they got a C on the paper that they wrote and they were upset about it. So you acknowledge that you heard what they said, but in different words. I can see when Mrs. Smith gave you the C, you thought you deserved better, a B, because you worked really hard on that. I can see you're really upset about that, or you're really angry, or whatever the word is. And so when you start doing that, you help a child build their feeling vocabulary. And in all the work I've done in emotional intelligence and the research on that, it says kids who build their emotional vocabulary can have better regulation. Because now they can identify how they're feeling and they don't need to escalate. So if they're coming in from a home where there isn't good emotional regulation and they aren't feeling validated, they're going to have a much more difficult time with that. So that's a really good thing to change immediately. How do we act with our spouses or significant others when we don't feel heard? Right? We have different ways of responding. We may give them the silent treatment, like, fine, you're not going to listen to me, well, I'm going to stop talking. We may go around and be aggressive, slam doors, stomp our feet, whatever it is. We may get really loud. So there is a consequence when we don't feel heard. So we really want kids to feel validated, even when we don't agree. What else? Anybody using a lot of punishment instead of consequences? We usually use punishment because we don't know what else to do, and it's I've done it. It's very common. And so sometimes we may just have to pause and say, I need to think about this. Like the time, my son was in about 3rd grade, and I was one of the black sheep 3rd grade parents, I guess, because I don't believe in sending my child to every single birthday party that he gets invited to. Because my son is not friends with every child. He gets invited to the birthday parties. And this is in early childhood, we started setting boundaries up with friendships. Honey, do you want to go to Jeremy's birthday party? Mom, I don't even like Jeremy. He's not very nice. I don't want to go to his birthday party. Okay? So we'd get all these invitations and we would talk about, okay, no problem, or did it work with our family schedule and all this? Because, if they get one, it's going in everybody's backpack. So one day my son gets invited to this birthday party. And what we would do is, instead of going, I would let the mom know, or the dad if he wasn't going, he wasn't able to attend, thank you so much for the invitation. And we would just send him a little note. It was just a little birthday card with balloons, whatever, and my son would write his name on it. So this is almost embarrassing to tell you this, because I couldn't believe my son did this. He was in 3rd grade, I was sitting at the kitchen table, and he got up, and I thought he went and wrote his name in the card. I'll call the kid Jeremy. It was Jeremy's birthday party, and he knew we were just going to send a note to Jeremy. Have a great birthday. And he went over and he wrote, I hate you anyway, in the birthday card that I bought for Jeremy. I got up and I was like literally in shock. I could not believe he just wrote this in the birthday card. So of course, what do you think my immediate response was? I was shocked. So what do you think emotionally I did? Oh my gosh, I was like, Grant Murray, and I just flipped out in the kitchen. Why would you say that? And I went on and on and on. Like, sit down at this kitchen table. And I reamed him out. I yelled at him. I was like, I can't believe you would talk like, why would you act like that? That's not very nice. On and on I went. All I needed to do was implement a logical consequence. So it goes back to, what behavior do I want to see? So what behavior would I want to see in that moment with a child getting invited to a birthday and we're going to send a birthday card? What do you think a logical consequence for that behavior was? No. Well, we did talk about why people want to go. But what was the consequence for doing that?
Did you have to buy a new card?
He had to make a card. And if you knew my son, how much he hated arts and crafts, and how every single art teacher that ever had him, was basically like, he just didn't want to participate. He hated anything art. I broke out every marker, the crayons, the construction paper. He had to create a card for Jeremy. Now think of how much he didn't like doing that. So I said to him, obviously, we're going to have to give him a card. And obviously, you're gonna have to make one now. I'm not going out and buying a card. So you're gonna make one. So he had to make one, and he sat at the kitchen table and did that. And then addressed the card, and then went out to the mailbox and put a stamp on it. I guarantee you, when you start implementing more logical consequences that teach the correct behavior, you're gonna have less of those behaviors. I still, to this day, never saw that type of blatant aggression from my son about a child who, I mean, he didn't like him, obviously, but I never saw him act like that. So we did talk about it. You're right, you need to talk about where did that come from, and also let him know that's not an appropriate way to respond. So he could have talked to me about it, but he didn't need to basically ruin the card we had for Jeremy. So there's an example of a direct connection between the behavior and the consequence. When we look at the 3 key elements to these parenting styles, I started writing a parenting book a couple years ago. I'm about a quarter of the way through it because it takes a tremendous amount of time that I don't have. But this is what the book is on, these 3 key elements. Because every parenting class I ever have conducted, it addressed structure, boundaries, and consistency. So when you look at your style and some of the characteristics within your style, you want to say, do I have these 3 things in place? They are the key elements to running a home where you're going to produce the healthiest kids. We talk about the structure. It's your schedule. It's your routine. My son is 18. I print him out a calendar. Because I work in Carlisle, we live in Lancaster, I print him out a calendar of where I'm going to be each day. Because a lot of times I don't get home until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So he knows where I'm going to be. I have it on the side of my refrigerator. He can check that. And I'm not texting him all the time about it. He has my calendar. So from a very young age, my son felt more comfortable knowing what was happening next. Just like I said, it produces less anxiety. So get some structure in your home. Get a routine to your day, from a morning routine to a bedtime routine. And yes, can your structure look a little different on weekends? Sure. Can they stay up a little later? Absolutely. But if you go totally off the scales on the weekend, it's going to be much harder to get them back then during the week. My son, just to let you know, all of elementary school, he was in bed by 8 o'clock. We are letting our kids stay up so late. And then we're wondering why we can't get them out of bed in the morning. Teachers are complaining across the state. These kids are exhausted coming to school. We have them in too many activities, way too many activities, and we're starting them too young. We're not letting them just play. And then we are topping that off with they're getting home and we're rushing them through the night. We're not allowing them to relax and unwind, and they're getting to bed too late. So we really need to be looking at that. Boundaries, those are the rules and those are those expectations I talked about. So if you've really thought tonight, possibly your expectations for behavior is too low for your child, you want to increase the expectation. But along with the expectation, you need to hold them accountable for it. So you can say, oh, I expect you to act like a 3rd grader by sitting at the kitchen table for 15 minutes and eating dinner with the family and not getting down the second you're done your cheeseburger. You may say that, but if you don't follow through every time, then that's not an expectation. That's just that would be great if you did that. It's not an actual expectation. So being consistent and following through with the expectation is going to go hand in hand with changing behavior. And then consistency. Follow through. Say what you mean and mean what you say. We cannot go to your friend's birthday party until you wrap their present. They refuse to wrap their present. So you go and wrap it and you're driving them to the birthday party 5 minutes later. You didn't mean it. If you mean what you say and you are consistent, like 99% of the time, we're going to get it wrong every once in a while, your child will then learn to change their behavior. But here's one that's part of consistency, that's a characteristic of a style that we really have to be careful with. It's consistency with our tone and our mood. If we are a parent who is inconsistent with the way we feel and act, and our child never knows who they're going to walk in and see after school, it's going to be, happy mom, I had a happy day. everything's great, I baked a pie, everything's great, rainbows and butterflies. And then the next day, it's like, you know, you're moody, you had a terrible day, you're short, you're abrupt, you have a short fuse. They can't be consistent with their behavior if you're not consistent with your emotional behavior. This is a huge one for parents, moms and dads alike. Being consistent with your emotional tone is going to speak volumes about how much your child can be consistent with their tone and their behavior. Why would you expect them to behave in an appropriate way if they don't know how you're going to act? So if one day you're happy and everything's great, they might say, oh, a little spilled milk, no big deal, I'll just get a paper towel. But the next day, spilled milk results in go to your room and they're being screamed and yelled at. Do you see how that's just going to set you up for all kinds of behavior issues? Thoughts or comments on those three things in your house? Because they're majorly impacting your behaviors. Yes?
How do you handle different schedules that it's difficult to have a routine in place because I'm getting home late, spouse is getting home late, but it's different days, different, kids don't want to go to bed at the same time, so they can't see one adult versus, you know, am I explaining that?
Yes, and that can be very, very challenging, but some of the things just need to be consistent. So it may be on Tuesdays, your husband gets home late, and you're like, you do get to stay up till 9:30 to see Dad. I know you didn't get to see him, you know, for 2 days or whatever, and that's on Tuesday. But let's say there's other days he doesn't get home till that time either. You're not doing that every day. There's some consistency to the basic structure that's in place. Then within that structure, you can have a little wiggle room. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when we're looking at structure, just looking at your schedule and saying, where are there parts that have to be set in stone? And where are there things that can be a little less structured in? Kids know what those should be. But if every area you're like, oh yeah, there's wiggle room here, there's wiggle room there, then there's going to be no consistency in the routine. How are we doing with this one? I see people shaking their heads like, yeah, I'm going to work on this one. Why don't we have structure? Why don't we have a routine? What's it require of us? Discipline. What else? What's it require of us as parents to have structure? Go ahead.
We just have to stand up for our children and think like, you know, like, it can't be that friend mentality. We have to be mom and dad. And they're not going to like it.
Right. The parent who says, I want to be my child's friend, I say to that parent, they only get one shot at who's their parent. 2 shots. They can have lots of opportunities for friendships. So we need to be very careful with that, because if we're always trying to make our children happy, that is not going to be real life. So they need to, again, hear no. You may not stay up late to finish watching that, or you may not stay up late to do X, Y, Z, because the real world is going to say no to that. And yes, so it requires discipline, it requires us to say no, and it also requires us to accept the consequences of the child melting down because of it. I guarantee you that will end when you get consistent in what you're saying. It'll end. I've been doing this like 14 years. It will end when they don't get the payoff anymore. The next one, the boundaries. Are you clear on the expectations? Are you clear on the rules? Do they know what's going to happen if they break the rules? There's certain things that are like rules that are more embedded, like curfew and things like that. And other things that are more like, you don't eat dinner in the living room, or we don't, and then somebody, you're like, you know what? We're going to make a special privilege. We're going to have a picnic, and we're going to put, it's a rainy day, and we're going to put a beach towel down, and we're going to have a picnic in the living room. There's some things like that where the kids know, hey, on a normal day, we're not eating dinner in the living room. This is a special day where we're having kind of a special family picnic. So there's going to be things that are clearly communicated, and also things that are communicated on what's going to happen if the rule is broken, whether it's technology, my son drives, all kinds of things with friends, things like that socially that you may have rules about. And then the last one, consistency. Say what you mean, because if you're a child, you would say to me tonight, Lisa, my child never takes me seriously, then I'll say you don't say what you mean. Because if you are inconsistent in that message, they're not respecting the message. They don't believe you, is what I would say. They don't believe you. And especially if you have to repeat yourself, like the lady who was asking her child to basically pick up his toys. It's repeating, repeating, repeating. And so after the third time, the child has learned, I don't need to do anything with the first 2 times. If you start counting, then maybe things are going to escalate. So you want your child to start action after you request it. I would say you say it once, you give them an expectation of what's going to happen, if you can, like dinner's going to be in 5 minutes kind of thing. And then you say, it's time to clean up. Then you, as a parent, go and do something, act. And that says to the child, you meant it. Remember, if you're still yelling from the kitchen, you didn't mean it because nothing's happening. And 10 minutes later, when the dinner is cold and you're upset, that was on you. That was not on the child. Some really, really good quotes that I like, that I did the first quote. The short-term ease of giving kids what they want when they want it now has long-term significant negative consequences. Because these are children that are much more demanding, and that's the more permissive parenting style. Any other quotes that stand out to you? Anything you'd like in particular? Someone can hear. Go ahead.
Parents are like here because, your children learn from you. And the acting and that.
Yes. Parents, we need to look in the mirror and say, what behaviors are we reflecting to our children? And what behaviors are things we absolutely identify our children doing? Exactly like us, like the mother yelling at her child, the child yelling back, and she's going, why are you yelling at me? It was as clear to a stranger as it could be, but for some reason when we're in the moment, we don't recognize it. There are many things your children are going to do that don't have anything to do with your parenting style. They're being children, they're in a developmental stage, they're pushing the limits. Again, if you respond in a way that says to the child, I hear you, I acknowledge it, I'm going to respond in a healthy way, you're going to help the child move to the next developmental level. And they're going to learn more appropriate responses. In the book, Dr. Sal Severe, he says these are 3 promises a parent needs to make to themselves when they recognize they're having some behavioral issues. He says first, promise to have courage. Have courage to do the right thing. Now specifically, you know things tonight that you should probably stop doing or start doing. So have the courage to recognize those things in yourself and make those changes. He also says, have the courage, or make the promise to have patience. Because if you have been doing something for 11 years that's been unhealthy, like yelling, don't expect when you change your parenting style for the child to respond the way you think they should respond if you've been doing it the other way. If you've been saying yes, 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 and giving in to whining and begging and crying, now all of a sudden tomorrow you're going to start to say no. Do not expect the child to say, okay, Daddy, no problem. I'm going to build some resilient muscles. I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to melt down. Because the behavior will get worse before it gets better. You need to hear me say that again. The behavior will get worse before it gets better. Because now they don't know you anymore. They don't know who you are. They've known you a certain way in the way you've been parenting, and now you've made a change. So you really have to have patience. And And then he says, promise to practice. Practice the very things that you know are going to encourage better behavior and better emotional regulation in your household. It starts with you. And I say this in almost every single one of my parenting classes. You don't get a do-over. My son is going to be 19 September 20th, and he leaves for Cabrini College on August 27th. I don't get a do-over. I don't go back to second grade and go, I wish I wouldn't have screamed and yelled at him a lot. I wish this wouldn't, I wish I wouldn't have done this. I don't get a do-over. You don't get a do-over either. What you do get to try is something a little different tomorrow. You can't take away what you've done. What you can put in place is healthy modeling and using the authoritative style. We have not ruined our children if we have done some of these things. What we do want to acknowledge, though, is our role in some of these characteristics and traits that you're seeing that are spilling out, maybe into the classroom or with friendships. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just in our homes. And again, that makes it much easier for us because we know we're the common denominator and we just have to make some of those changes. So I want you to be the parent who wakes up tomorrow morning, like me, who says, you know what, I'm not going to get it right every day. I am going to have a bad day. I might say the wrong thing. I know, though, what I should be doing, and I am going to put every effort into doing the right thing because your kids will thank you when they're turning 18. I really hope this gave you something to think about. My contact information, my email address is on the front of your packet. Many people contact me after the parenting classes, and I will stick around and answer some of your private questions briefly after the class, but do not hesitate to ever contact me if you're really struggling. I have a waiting list about 15 people deep right now for the parenting consulting work that I'm doing, because people are really struggling. And if you're one of those folks who really want to get on that list, please let me know and I'd be happy to help you. Thank you very much for your time.